don't you tell me about who is Brenda?
I know Brenda, but I think somebody wants to know about you.
Well, since someone wants to know about me, I'll start by saying I am a lifelong dependent of Army veterans. I was born in Fort Benning, Georgia, from Columbus. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, and he retired at Fort Benning, so that's where our home was. My father was from Florida. My mother was from North Carolina, and they were determined not to live in either state, so they found a place in the middle, and that's where we settled. My dad came back from Vietnam in '67 when he retired from the military, and we lived the aftermath of a Vietnam vet that was that suffered with PTSD as a result of his combat service.
Firsthand. Yeah.
Firsthand. From start to finish.
Wow.
That journey was a journey to be reckoned with, but we made it.
Yeah.
I am number 6 of 8. There are 2 girls and 6 boys. I lost a brother in '78. He was murdered here in Atlanta.
Wow.
So that was very difficult, and it was a very pivoting point in my life.
I'll bet.
It was a loss that only recently I think I've been able to come to peace with.
Because you had to be young at that point.
I was 12.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's 2 under me, and my younger brother is what I like to call my baby. I would probably say that the youngest brother and the oldest brother were probably the closest out of all of us.
Yeah. That's a lot of kids.
It's a lot of kids.
So
it was fun.
So not only were you a big sister, a little sister, so now tell me about, you're also a mother.
I am. I have 4 plus 1. I birthed 2 girls and 2 boys, and I was blessed to be able, with my husband, to adopt one, little Aubrey. And so I have a 37, 36, 34, 32, and a 15-year-old.
Wow, you started back over with your bonus child.
I did.
And so you're a grandmother too, right?
I am. I have 3 from my oldest daughter, and then I have 2 boys, 2 grandsons from my oldest son.
So life is full.
Life is
so
great.
You have lots of people in your life. Life is full.
I do.
So tell me about your passion. Other than being a mom, a grandmother, and all those kind of things, what are your passions?
Is there anything left?
I know, right? Is there any room for anything else?
Well, my passion is to serve. Now that my mom has passed away, see myself as the matriarch in our family. I am not necessarily the take charge one in the family, but I am the one that's going to step up to the plate to make sure things are done accurately, efficiently, and effectively.
So I can call you Brenda, get it done. That's what I can call you.
You got it. You got it. But my true passion is in serving, because I like to see my life as a representative of Christ. And so Christ being a servant, the greatest servant, I like to model my life behind that. And I like to serve those that serve. That's my ultimate package. And then I also like to serve those that didn't serve. I like to serve all those that God has placed in my path.
Yeah. Having a heart for service is not always an easy journey, is it? Because you're always of giving out. Right. So what do you do to replenish? How do you recharge?
I recently took a trip to Costa Rica.
Ooh,
it was the first...
Tell me about Costa Rica.
Oh, God, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was the first time in my life I ever had a 2-week vacation. And my goal was to go on a sabbatical. It was all that and then some. And so while I was there, I met, believe it or not, I met a veteran.
Of course you did.
But I didn't go to him. I saw him. He had a parrot on his shoulder, and I was walking to the pool, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's a beautiful bird." It was a native bird, and the color. I'm a visual person, so the color was so rich. I was like, "Wow, here I am in this foreign country, a place I've never been before," and I was just marveling at the beauty. I was on a mountaintop, and as I looked out all over the mountain, all I could see is mountaintop and ocean, and I was in the middle of the jungle. I was like, I didn't feel like Tarzan, but I kind of felt like Jane.
Oh, I love that.
And so,
see the next movie.
yeah, it was a beautiful experience because the guy walked to me and he's like, hi, my name is, we'll just say Peter. My name is Peter, and I'm terrified of birds, and this is my bird, Mango. He has a broken wing, and I'm broken.
Wow.
And immediately I was like, okay, not now, God. I'm
drawn to that spirit inside of you.
I am on sabbatical. I'm supposed to be resting. This is our time. They don't get my time. But that's not how it works.
No, it doesn't.
When you are a servant, you serve what God gives you.
Yes. And it doesn't mean it's on a clock.
Absolutely.
Yes. Or is in a particular place. Because yours was on sabbatical in another country.
Right. And it's not your plan.
Beautiful
it has
story.
Absolutely nothing to do with your plan. That morning, I was finishing up my book. And as I was writing in the book, I wrote, okay, God, I'm here for you. This is you and me. It's about nobody else. I'm not going to do any work. And within hours, I was doing work.
So basically, during that time, you opened yourself up to the opportunity that God would bring you.
Absolutely.
So not only are you a servant, I heard, you're an author or an aspiring author,
Right.
published author. You're already an author because you're writing it, an aspiring published author. But you're also an entrepreneur.
I am.
Right?
Right.
So tell me a little bit about your business.
Well, I will start with the name of the business. The name of my business is 180 Comprehensive Veteran Services, and we educate, we advocate, and we empower veterans to serve themselves. And the 180 is about a turnaround. And for those in the military, that would be an about face. And so whatever direction you're going in, when you come to 180, we're going to do an about face, and we're going to take a different direction in life.
Yes. So not only do you provide services, but I also heard that you're a counselor.
I am.
So how do you fit that in? And tell me what you do with your clients.
Well, technically, this is a business, but realistically, it's a ministry.
Yeah.
And so my foundation is built on a Christian foundation. And so I get to use the Word of God to help these veterans transition from a place of brokenness into a place of triumph.
Yeah.
And so in the counseling, I get to use God's word, but there's places that every veteran that comes to me, there's some places of brokenness. And through my education, I'm able to provide them tools to use for themselves to bring themselves out of that place of brokenness.
Yeah. So it's full circle. So even though it's a 180 turn when it comes to services, it's full circle in terms of wrapping around the needs of that veteran that walks through the door.
And their families.
And their families.
Yes, you have to include their families because when they serve, they're not serving by themselves. Their families are back here, wherever the veteran is. The family is here supporting the veteran and also serving. Yep. And so I always like to thank the veteran for their services, but I also like to thank their family members as well.
Yeah. So what separates you from other places that a veteran can go?
We care.
Ah.
We care, and we go above and beyond, not only to show in our walk that we care, but we also care enough to, when we see that there's a problem, we help direct that veteran to the different places, like different providers. I take the time to actually study the medical records and their conditions, and I like to educate the veterans on what's going on. What's surprising is that the majority of the veterans don't even know about their conditions. They have no understanding whatsoever about what's actually wrong with them. So when I sit down with them and we go over the conditions, I ask them, do you understand what it is to have coronary artery disease? Do you know where it came from? Do you know things that you should avoid to eat and how exercise will help that and how to prolong your life?
So it's not only just providing the services that they need, it's an education that's a part of it as well.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a huge distinction from other places that they can go, is that they also have the ability to learn and correct the behavior. I get it. The 180, education and reverse the behavior. Right. I think we have lots of in common I should introduce myself.
Thank you.
I am Dr. Andrea Bowens-Jones. I am a certified speaker, coach, and trainer with Inspire, Develop, Grow, IDG Vision. And I do similar to you, not with veterans, but in terms of serving people and enabling them to get to whatever that next step is. A lot of the people that I service are people who have been in corporate, like myself, for many years, gotten to a place where they were stuck in trying to figure out what their next steps are and trying to figure out, I'm at this crossroad. You probably can testify, being at this crossroad, do I go left or do I go right with my career? I come in and kind of help them kind of tease out what the options are and equip them. And sometimes that equipping can look like leadership coaching. It can look like communication. It can look like teamwork if they're inside of an organization on an individual basis. But I also go into organizations. And because these skills are transferable, these organizations can look like hospitals, they can look like corporations, or they can be small businesses that have a team of 5 or 6 people and they're just trying to get themselves to work more cohesively together. So I get some of the things you're saying about being able to kind of help people where they are, because I'm helping people where they are, but also equipping them for the journey going forward. So let's talk about something a little different. Okay. Because I can tell you on my journey, and I've been on this journey for, it'll be 8 years this year. I can't believe it. But I've failed a lot over these 8 years. And failure comes with the entrepreneur journey, but it also brings these beautiful lessons, these gifts, I call them. Can you tell me about a time that maybe you have failed and you got this beautiful gift of learning something new that actually changed the way you are personally or the way you did business going forward?
I think one of my greatest failures was probably not listening. And what I learned was prior to being in the brick and mortar, I worked from home, and COVID hit, and I had to get these people out my house.
Pivot. That's what everybody was talking about.
Absolutely. And what I didn't realize, but God showed me shortly after I got into the brick and mortar, is that I was actually in a Jonah moment. God had already been showing me where it was time to, you've been asking for increase, so here, I'm giving you this increase, but I was afraid to actually step out on faith and walk into my increase. And so he's like, oh, okay, I know how to get your attention. Boom, COVID hits. Yeah. And the fear of, I'm sure that was with everybody, is what was happening with the mass deaths as a as a result of COVID. Yeah. And so my husband at the time was very ill in a nursing home, and I didn't want, I needed to protect myself and Aubrey, because we were the only ones at home, and so we needed to be protected so that when we came in contact with my husband, that everything would be okay. And I was afraid to continue to operate from home. So when I stepped out into the brick and mortar, I had a full staff, and I didn't know how to listen to the needs of my staff, to meet the needs of my clients.
Because you were just going. I
was just going. Yes. I had no direction. I didn't come into this for business. I started out helping veterans because I heard their cry. Yeah. I started out helping veterans.
Servant heart of yours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I started out helping veterans because of what my father didn't have. Mm-hmm. And I knew the life that we had growing up through abuse from, my father's alcoholism. Mm-hmm. That was his means of coping with the trauma from combat. Yes. And so we lived that life. And as recipients of his trauma, the collateral damage, I wanted to be able to work with other veterans so that their family members, one, would understand what was happening with that veteran, what they could do as family members to support that veteran, and also get the help that they needed for themselves.
Yeah. That was a tough time. I'm glad you brought it up, is that I think I learned some powerful lessons during the transition going through 2020 and 2021, where yours was about listening. I think for mine, it was about keeping the mindset going forward. Because at that time, I was doing a lot of in-person kind of facilitation. And to watch my calendar just disappear. And I was like, this date canceled, this date canceled. I had to figure out how was I going to do business going forward. I started doing more virtual sessions, but in particular, where you had a Jonah moment, I was sent to the lesson of David and how David was, because he had already won the battle against the lion and the bear, it was now time for him to face the big thing, the Goliath in front of him.
Right.
And reminded that every time you sit down, you get ready to do something, it's not like a new beginning, because you already won a couple of battles before.
Right.
And you can pull from that strength. And I think that was one of the powerful lessons that I learned during that time moving forward. So much so that I actually launched a new training series out of it called Slaying Your Invisible Dragon, where we took that thing that was our Goliaths and we went in and we figured out how to slay that thing going forward. Right. So yes, I can definitely see how going through that experience actually taught us lessons, but also learned from some failures that we experienced during that time.
And speaking of failures, one of the things that I recognize is that this is not a business, it's a ministry. And the closer I get to God and working in my purpose, the less mistakes I make. Because it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about the purpose that God has given me to serve his other children. And so I've learned to listen to my staff. I've learned to listen to the needs of the veterans and their families. And I've also learned to listen to God in how he wants to use me to help bridge all of that together. Not coming from a business background, not coming from a business-minded family, I had no idea how to run a business. Yeah. And so being a part of the chamber in Rockdale, the best chamber.
Yes.
And I took an entrepreneurial class, and it changed my life.
Tell me about the skills you learned and how you actually were able to use those skills to better serve your clients.
I think one of the greatest skills that I learned was from our facilitator, Mr. Steve Bromell, and what he wrapped up the whole session was about your worth. And I felt like this because I felt like I've been cheating myself and walking in my worth. My purpose when I wake up every morning is to make the ultimate impact in a veteran's life.
Yeah.
Actually, not just a veteran, but anybody that comes across my path is to make the greatest impact. And if I'm not making the greatest impact in my own life, it's kind of difficult to make it in somebody else's life.
I love that.
So now I'm more
Starts
intentional.
with you first.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm more intentional about self-care. I just recently...
I saw you looking good over there.
Thank you. You as well. I truly believe in divine intervention, and I believe that God brought us together for a reason.
I do too.
You have truly helped me through your coaching and helped me through your prayers and your words of encouragement, and helping also pull out my worth and allowing me to dig deeper and have a safe place to dig deep. And what's interesting is when you're on the other side. Yeah. You know, I like not necessarily being in control, but I like where it's not about me. And one of the things that I learned in the Entrepreneurial Academy, it is about me. It is about me. It is about the purpose that God has placed on my life. Yeah. And I can't, as a business owner, be in the background. I have to be in the forefront. So I am being very intentional about doing this interview right now.
Even if you got to take baby steps to get to the front.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about, we talked about how you serve the people that come across you. What makes someone seek you out? Like, what is that? What are they looking for? That kind of thing.
Blessed assurance. I would say 99.9% of our clients are referrals.
Wow.
We do
referred from other
veterans that we've served.
Oh, wow.
As a matter of fact, we get a
that
lot of
means
referrals.
You deliver.
Thank
you
God.
Deliver.
To God be the glory.
Yes.
We have people that come in that heard about us that we have not served. And so one of the things that when I talk to veterans, I was like, well, how did you hear about us? And they'll give me a name, and that's, I'll look in the database right quick, and that's nobody that we serve. I don't even know who they are. But
we call that divine intervention.
Absolutely. Divine order.
Yes.
So I'm very grateful that we've been able to build a clientele based off of referrals. Mm-hmm. And so in that entrepreneurial class, one of the things that I got from Steve Bromell, our facilitator, was, how is your business marketing itself?
Yeah. And you can honestly say
how much money are you spending in advertising? Yeah. Is your advertising in your works, or is in your advertising in what you're displaying out for all to see?
You had to do some inner reflection there.
Absolutely. And that's when I realized that we weren't advertising. That all of our business, sometimes people look us up on Google, but the 99.9% of our business is based on referrals. So, it's starting to help me rely more on the purpose that God has given me, and it's not being about the business, for real. Yeah. Not really.
That just brings to mind what happens in our life when we seek Him first. He tells us, seek ye first. And in doing so, He illuminates the path. He gives us insight. He can give us wisdom to carry it out. And it does not have to look like what someone else is doing in terms of how they run their business, how they put things together. So I love that you shared the fact that putting God first, putting yourself and your self-care first enables you to kind of carry out the business and serve people in such a capacity.
Let me show you the other side. I was invited to a networking event. A little over a month ago. And when you talk about bringing things together, I brought some gifts to the veterans, and I asked at that event, would all the veterans, I wanted to acknowledge all the veterans, and so all the veterans, stood up, raised their hand, and I thanked them for their service. But what I recognized was that the videographer, Kevan Ware, was a veteran. And immediately I knew that after the event that I wanted to go and talk to him, because I just wanted to know something about his story. And what happened was he ended up coming out the next day, and we did a filming. That was my first filming. And it wasn't so much about the filming. It was more about, again, God bringing people in my path to show me my worth in this ministry, in this business, in this organization. And we had a veteran that drove from Massachusetts to Georgia. Wow. Because he wanted to see for himself if what he heard from his coastie buddy was actually true. Wow. And one of the things that Kevan showed, instilled in me, is that you have to capture the moment. I never wanted to be in front of a camera, even though God had already shown me that I would be with Tyler and Oprah on the stage.
Girl, I'm going to be sitting right next to you. Be like,
with the book launch. And that was like 10, 15, almost 20 years ago.
Look at there.
And here it is. God is bringing it in full, fruition to where I'm actually an author.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Yes.
It's happening. And so when he talked about capturing the moment, every time he talks to me about capturing the moment, now everything I see is about a captured moment. I have these snapshots in my mind. I'm taking a picture of this and I'm taking a picture of that. And he introduced all these different ideas about, what you do. Yeah. Some of the people that come across you know what you do, but what about those that don't know you? How would they know what you do? You need to put it out here. They need to see this like in real time, what this looks like. And so we were blessed to be able to capture a moment of a veteran in his brokenness.
Wow. And he was vulnerable enough to let you see that.
He did.
Wow.
He did. And then we were also blessed enough to where there was another veteran that came in, and he talked about what 180 meant to him and his family.
How was that experience for you?
God, it was so heartwarming. I know what my intention is at the beginning of the day, and I know that, when I pray before the company and for the veterans and for those that I come across, I understand the purpose. But when you hear it, when you see it
back to you,
when it's played back, it's so surreal. It's overwhelming. It's positively overwhelming.
To me, it confirms the calling, because sometimes on the entrepreneurial journey, you'll get so focused on the doing, and you forget that the reason why you're doing the doing part is because you were called to do it. Absolutely. And when you hear it played back, it's like confirmation. The other thing I heard when you were talking is the power of stories. When you're talking about capturing a moment, is the power of stories. Stories are powerful.
They are.
They not only tell us where we've been in that journey and those experiences, but they also can tell us about where we're going in that one.
Yeah.
So let's spend a little time talking about these powerful stories.
Okay.
So we talked about failure lessons, but what about the flip side is, what are the lessons now that you're preparing to tell going forward? What are the things that you are starting to put into the business that you feel like will be a bigger impact to the people that you're serving?
Well, one of the things is that I've been blessed from probably all walks of life to be able to work with veterans.
Yeah. You spot them on vacations.
Absolutely. Grocery store, gas station.
Networking events. Yes.
Absolutely right. One of the things that I get the pleasure and the honor of doing is to be able to minister to veterans on all levels. And we have our first World War II veteran.
Oh, wow.
Down to our the Afghanistan veterans. Right. And my son served over in Afghanistan and got hit twice by ID.
Survivor. Okay.
Right. But to hear that as a mother, that your son has gotten hit twice. My son was the front passenger and the driver was killed. And so even thinking about it, like
what could have been is just as bad as what you're experiencing.
And so one of the things that I want to say is that most people look at veterans and they think, oh, well, you can't be wounded because I don't see you missing a limb. You can't be wounded because you're not in a wheelchair, you're not on a cane, you're not on crutches. That's not what that means. There's a lot of internal trauma. There's a lot of emotional and mental trauma that takes place actually from the time they step into the military.
Yeah.
The whole brainwashing, reprogramming, breaking them down to build them up for their purpose when in essence, the military has its own agenda.
Yeah.
And what happens is after they break them down and build them up and they use them for their purpose, when their purpose is done, the purpose that's meant for the military is done, thank you for your service, goodbye. Yeah. They don't deprogram them.
Fortunate part.
Right. Yes. And they don't transition them from military life back to civilian life, but they do transition them from civilian life to military life. And so they're stuck. And so I get the opportunity and the blessing to be able to help transition them back into civilian life, no matter how long they've been separated from the military.
That's good. So not just the services, let me treat the things that you have wrong, but now let me also help. I understand deprogramming. I'm trying to think of another word that will help it feel more positive when they go through the process with you with it, but I can't think of another word for it.
Let me say this. So
reprogram?
you talk about the stories.
Yeah.
I had a veteran that I met in Red Lobster, and he had on a
special. Even when you're eating dinner.
Even when I'm eating dinner, and I was waiting for our table, and as I was waiting, I just sat at the bar because there was not much room, and so I sat there at the bar, and I looked over and I saw a veteran that had on a special forces. Well, that's an elite group in the Army, and so I was like, oh, I gotta go say something. And so I went over and I introduced myself, and I turned to the wife. I just assumed that was his wife. And I said, thank you for your service. And he's like, well, wait a minute. I'm the one that served. I said, you're not the only one that served. And so I struck up a conversation. But he ended up coming on and being my client. And in the midst of working with him, we did some counseling sessions. And it was COVID. It was during COVID. And I had not transitioned into the brick and mortar. And so we met at Panera. and we talk about stories. I was like, so tell me about your story. What was it like for you in Vietnam? And I opened the door.
And then did the flood come out?
I opened a door that has not been opened since he left Vietnam.
Wow. So we're talking late 60s, early 70s.
Absolutely. 68.
68.
Yeah. 1968. And he told me a story about how the Viet Cong had decapitated 2 boys. And they carried their heads in a rucksack.
And he saw that.
And he saw that. And he took ownership of that because he was there and he felt like in his mind he should have done something.
So he's been carrying these bags, literally,
absolutely,
with him and figuratively for all these years.
And he started bawling. He was crying so hysterical. I was like, ooh, okay, we are out in public. We're in a restaurant. There's a lot of people around. You wanted to protect him at that point. I wanted to protect him, but that's not what it was.
Yeah.
I needed to be able to, he had this safe space, and I needed him to be able to release that. Yeah. And what he did, what happened was there was a reprogramming.
Okay, so it is reprogramming.
It is reprogramming because I let him get it all out, but then I had to confirm to him. I had to let him know it wasn't his fault. Yeah. And like you, he shook his head in acknowledgement, but the Holy Spirit was telling me that's not enough. And so I told him again, and he did like you, and he was shaking his head like in acknowledgement. And I was like, no, I need you to tell me that it wasn't your fault. And it took us about 15 minutes for him to be able to tell me that it wasn't his fault.
And then that released it.
Oh,
that's powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. So that is just a piece of what you're starting to kind of give. So let's talk about voices, because you've talked about being an author. We've talked about you being an entrepreneur, but part of being the author part is releasing your voice, and here it's about releasing your voice to the world. But not all women are comfortable, or some struggle with releasing their voices. What advice would you give to someone who is on this journey? Maybe they're writing a book. Maybe they're thinking about starting a podcast. They just want to use their voice to do something. What would you tell them? It's brave of you. You're doing something brave right now.
Right. Well, embrace those that God put in your life.
Embrace them.
Embrace those people that come and help promote your voice. Yeah. And one of the things that I can definitely say and that I appreciate about K'Van when I met him was that's what he was doing. He's like, your voice needs to be heard. I was in a Bible study class with my chamber group, and I did a presentation about committed forgiveness. Yes. And I was told at the end of that presentation that my voice needed to be heard, and the Pastor Tim on that call said, Brenda, you need to take this presentation and put it in the book. What he did not know is that I was already writing a book. I was writing a book 15 years ago, and I just kept.
This is the same book that's going to get you on those sofas with those people.
Absolutely.
Okay, just making sure it's the same story.
Call it for what it's going to be, right? Absolutely. But it opened up something. It was the confirmation that I needed. It was that push that I needed to get out of that Jonah moment and step into my worth.
Yeah.
And then in doing the book and writing the book, that voice is now starting to come out. There's a boldness that God is allowing me to walk into, not of my own. Don't misunderstand, but that boldness is, why not?
Yeah.
Why not let my voice be heard? You know, I just coming through the childhood that I came through, which was pretty horrific. I had no voice. I have a voice now.
Yes.
My voice can be heard.
Yeah.
I can speak to other women and other men, which is what I'm able to do when I'm working with the veterans.
That's what I was just about to say.
Absolutely.
You get your voice, going back to that self-care, now you're even more powerful, more effective with the people you serve and getting their voices back.
Absolutely. And so I can see now how others see me when I didn't have a voice. To having a voice, and I was like, wait a minute, who is this? Is that you? It's like, oh, even my children, Ma, you changed.
Yeah.
I have a voice.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that as a child, when you lose your voice, it doesn't matter who you come across, even if it's your own children. If you don't have a voice, you don't have a voice.
Yeah.
And so when I work with the veterans, and some people may say like MST, let me talk about that because that's really big in the military community, and a lot of people don't want to talk about military sexual trauma. I'm going to talk about military sexual trauma. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people in power. There's a lot of higher NCOs and officers that are allowing a lot of military sexual trauma to take place, and it's killing the veterans. These veterans are walking out here traumatized from in a locked box. When you sign your name and you raise your hand and you get sworn in, you're no longer yourself. Right. You no longer belong to yourself. You belong to the military. You have to do what they say, when they say, how they say. Yeah. And if they tell you not to take something to another level and you do it, you're going to suffer the consequences. They're going to smoke you. They're going to give you extra duty. And smoking means just making you do like extra
I was
duty.
going to say, break it down for me.
Sit-ups, push-ups, the obstacle course. They'll, you know, like what you see on the movies, they, you know, get you out there, hold you down, making you do all these exercises while you wait on the high power. You know, there's ways that they can do it now. I don't know in the modern army if they can, or modern military today, if they can do it to that extent, but there's power in the pen. And so when it comes up to promotions and things like that, they have a way to, you know, to kind of kill it. And so the stories that I'm hearing is how their voices got muffled through the military. And so they come out with that same that same mentality. And I have the blessing from my story and my journey to be able to help them get their voice back.
One, I think you recognize it. Because once you've experienced something, I do that as well in my business, is once you've gone through something, so even though you don't necessarily tell them your story as they're getting theirs out, it makes you more sensitive to, and maybe this discernment that you were talking about, of recognizing the signs when someone is there, still suffering from whatever it is, whether it's the intense trauma that you talked about, or just the lack of not knowing what their voice is because they've never heard it.
Right.
If you've never heard your voice, you don't know what it sounds like. You don't know what it has to say. So
one of the things about, excuse me, that's interesting is that I have to advocate that same voice within my family, with my siblings, because we all grew up in the same household. We all grew up in the same abusive household, and everybody's voice was muffled. And so now we're not there. We're not those little kids anymore. And so I have brothers that served in the military. And the hardest part of what I've done in helping veterans have been in helping my own family.
Starts at home first, right?
Starts at home. But that's been the most difficult, that's been the most challenging. Right, part of helping veterans and getting in their backstory. And what's interesting is, so when I talk to my brothers, I was like, why is it so difficult for you when I already know your backstory? I know the backstory from my perspective. I need the backstory from your perspective, because I need to put the puzzles together, the pieces of the puzzle together to help you with your claim. I need to take your story and explain to the VA how who you are and what happened to you during the military, how it turned out to be who you are now. And so to be able to put that in VA language, I first have to get your story. And so when I
like, you already know it. You write it for me, because then I don't have to voice it. I don't have to go back and say the story.
Right.
Yeah. So how have you overcome those challenges?
Which ones?
In dealing with your family and getting them the voice, because I'd imagine you would have the same kind of challenges with some of your clients that you serve, where they're not quite ready to give you that story to go for, but want you to kind of figure it out and put the pieces together with what you have.
Well, with my children, I came out of mama mode.
Okay.
That was not about being their mother. With my brothers, I had to come out of sister mode. So there was a time when I was in my master's and I had a class assignment and I had to interview someone, and it had to be about a story, a counseling moment. And what I did was I interviewed my son. I was like, hey, I need your help. He was living with me at the time. He had just came back from the military. He had just exited the military. I was like, I just need your help, like really, really bad. I was like, I waited till the last minute. I need your help. Can you get, all right, Mom, come on. So we went and we sat down. I set everything up, and I already had my questions. And so it wasn't about me being his mother. Once I started asking him the questions about his military experience,
Yeah.
I could feel, and I didn't even realize what was happening, but there was a separation from mother to son. Now it was more of counselor-client. And the things that my son was revealing to me about his military experience, I knew that he was kind of out of character as a son because of the language that he was using. My son is very respectful, and he would never use profanity in my presence.
You just let him go.
But I had to let him go.
Yes.
And I when I did the recording and I turned it in, my instructor said, "This is too phenomenal. This is too real." Who was that person? And I sat there and I was like, "Oh no, I don't want to tell. I don't want to tell." She's like, "Was that a family member?" She's like, "How were you able to do that? How were you able to separate?" And it was truly the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, I love that. Because one, you were practicing for what you were about to do, or the things that you were doing in your career, but it also helps you step outside and be able to facilitate these stories coming to life and in order to be able to deliver the services.
It also provided me the opportunity to be able to see it from a veteran's perspective, not my son's perspective or not my brother's perspective. But so when the younger veterans come in, I get to tell them part of my son's story. And I get to let them know, like, I can relate to you. You're not by yourself. Don't think that there's an age difference. Don't think that just because there's a gender difference or, an experience difference, like you being a service member or a veteran and I not actually served in the military, there is a connection. And I can connect with you to the point to where I can help you come through. I can give you the tools to use to be able to transition from your place of trauma to a place of wellness.
I love that. So how long does your clients typically stay with you from a process standpoint? It
depends on where they come in at. Some come in just for the VA services. Some come in and they get their, they max out with their benefits 100%. And then they come back and they want help with Social Security and the federal retirement, the OPM. And so they'll come back, or they'll come back and want counseling with them and their family.
So you kind of create this loose family network
Absolutely.
Of folks that always welcomes people to come back, go forward. They don't have to graduate out and not see you again.
And I have one that was so pleased with our services that he came back to volunteer.
Oh, and you create new opportunities for them.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about turning no's to yeses. Because on this journey, it is not uncommon for us to get a whole lot of no's, and especially when it comes to family members seeing the vision. I imagine you've already said that you never set out to just kind of start a business.
Right.
What advice do you have with someone who's received a whole bunch of no's because nobody can see the vision that they have for them and they want to turn it into a yes?
Can I answer it with a question?
Okay. Does that mean I have to answer it?
Yes.
Okay, I will.
How did Nike
Okay, I don't know about Nike.
so popular? What was their slogan that made them so popular?
Oh, just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I talked to one of the city councilmen some years ago about wanting to start a nonprofit for at-risk youth. And it was due to the death of my daughter. She died unexpectedly. And she was 9 months pregnant, and so we lost her and the child, the baby. And I went to him and I asked him, I had this great idea, and he practically told me no, it wasn't going to happen.
Wow.
I did it anyway.
Yes. Turn that no to a yes.
And one of the young kids that was in that program is now one of my clients and one of my veteran clients today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's the advice. Just do it. Do it anyway.
Do it.
Anyway. If you keep hearing the no's, find another way around. Circumvent it. Yes.
But I would say if it's about starting a business, I would definitely say before you start a business, find an entrepreneurial class to take.
Yeah. Go learn something first.
Go learn something first.
Yes.
And again, I don't regret coming into this with my heart because I'm heartfelt, I'm heartfelt to serve.
Yeah.
But if I had to do it all over again, I would have definitely taken an entrepreneur class to learn how to do business. If I'm coming into business, I now looking back, it would have been good to learn how to do business first and then work in my passion.
Yeah. Kind of that whole analogy about flying the plane and assembling it at the same time, and I may have messed that up, but that's exactly how I felt as well. Because when you are when God opens it up and gives you that vision and you start running with it, you write it down a little bit, and literally while you're writing it, technically you're really running at the same time. It's like, oh, he gave me that, let me go do that.
Yeah.
He gave me that, let me go do that. Without fully vetting out that full plan with it. So completely understand that one, because I have built some planes, landed some planes, and build another one, get back up there on this whole journey that we're on.
Let me say this about the journey.
Yeah.
You know, the closer I get to God, the easier the journey becomes.
Yeah.
It's not, I came in, it was hard. I was going through staff member after staff member. I couldn't understand, Lord, what is wrong? Why am I?
He said, seek me.
I know. and so I couldn't get it. And I went from a full staff down to one. And it was when my husband passed away, a little over a year and a half ago, and my staff walked out. And I only had one that stayed. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because my husband and I, we were married for 33 years.
Wow.
And so I was with him for over half my life. Great man. Thank you.
Yeah.
And he was my covering. And so when he passed, I felt exposed.
Yeah.
I had, it was like, having a house, and then this tornado comes and it takes all the walls and it takes the roof, and now you just there on this foundation with no covering. And I remember crying out to God, and he's like, I am your husband. And so now I had another protector, I had another provider, I had another covering. And it started to just draw me closer to God in a different way, because right after he passed and my staff walked out, then that was another major loss. And so, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to give up, and thank goodness that it was really important about that rapport that I had built with the veterans, because God had veterans to start calling me, call after call. I don't know if you thinking about just quitting and giving up, but I hope that you don't, because everything that you've done has helped me and my family, and it built me up. And I just kept getting these calls, and so I took a month off. And I came back in. I got more work done, and I had more claims submitted in that month that I returned than I had in the whole time I've been doing it.
Look at there.
And working and just seeking God and finding a deeper purpose and what I'm doing. And so now my staff is beginning to build back up, and the vision, having people, having staff, for 180, having staff to have the same vision as I have.
Such an important piece. Yeah.
That was the killer.
If they can't see it, then they cannot be on the journey with you.
I went on Indeed, and I looked at applications, and I was looking for experience. What I failed to do when we talk about failures was to look at their vision. When I did the interviews, I forgot to ask them about their vision. Yeah. Where do you see yourself with this company in 3 to 5 years? How do you, what part do you see yourself playing?
Their vision, their values. Do they overlap with yours? All those things.
I just looked and I said, I need bodies in here. I need people that are experiencing case management. That's not really what I needed. Yeah. I needed people that was experiencing life with caring and having empathy and having a love of God and a love for our country and those that served our country.
So overlap in terms of their values, because those skills can be taught. I mean, this is what I learned, is what I do with the clients that I serve, is we can teach a lot of those other skills that may not show up on a resume, but you can't teach someone to have a heart for people. You can't teach someone to have the same values as you do. They either have them or they don't.
Right.
So many nuggets I heard when you were talking. I heard not only turning those no's to yeses, just do it, but I also heard another piece in there is the faith part of it. That the equation doesn't work if you don't have that nugget, that piece in there, in addition to with the drive to move forward with it.
Right.
Yes. Good. Do we keep going?
So let me ask you.
I got edit that part anyway. It's my fault.
I heard you move. I'm sorry. So I said, he's telling us to stop.
Okay, 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Make sure that you highlight your websites.
Oh, forgot it.
Okay, highlight them.
And it's hard for me to switch back
Yeah.
and forth. I can either engage her conversation. I can't do me at the same time.
Okay.
So,
You got it.
yes, we are.
Okay, so make sure you do that part.
Okay.
Let them know that you're in Georgia.
How do they find you?
Oh, and we serve vets all over the world.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good
Ooh,
part.
yeah. Okay.
So, if a veteran is looking for your services, how do they find you?
Through prayer. No.
Pray and I come.
No, seriously, I actually had a lady that came in yesterday that she was seeking veteran services because her husband was deceased. So as a widow, she was seeking veteran services. And it was so interesting because she said, God led me right to you. So even though I said it jokingly.
Yeah, but it does happen.
laugh.
It does happen.
But our website is 180compvets.com. And so you can find us through Google. You can find us on Facebook. We also have Instagram. I am learning to get out into the social media. I'm not a social media person, but that was a good question. So, you can find us on
as
those.
well.
And you can call us at 770-595-0104. And our beautiful Cassie our intake specialist will greet you with love. She too is in the spirit. So
Yes.
I get a lot of compliments. The veterans feel very warm when they call and her greeting,
Yeah.
and she brings them in. It's a beautiful experience. We serve veterans all over the world, and we are located in Conyers, Georgia.
Right here in Conyers,
Right here.
Georgia.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So anything else you want to tell someone who is maybe trying to figure out if they need your services? What would you tell them? These are the things to look for. These are the things to prepare for before they contact you.
I would say this, because you served, and my heart is to serve those that serve. Just call us and let us figure out whether or not, you need additional services or what services that you need. Mm-hmm. My motto is we're not leaving nothing on the table. Don't leave nothing on the table. But I have a question for you.
Yes.
I heard you talk about, some of the things that you do and how you coach individuals and, on corporate level and other organizations. How would they reach you?
Well, they can reach me also through my website, idgvision.com. That stands for Inspire, Develop, Grow. So idgvision.com. Or they can follow me on all the platforms, LinkedIn, my name, Dr. Andrea Bowens-Jones, Instagram, as well as Facebook. And that's Dr. Andrea, 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 Bowens, Bowens-Jones. They can find me all those ways. And you can also call, but it's best to kind of reach out to me on email as well, Andrea, Andrea, @idgvision.com. And I'd be happy to talk to you about any of the services that I offer, whether it be for individual coaching or mastermind groups, or if you're looking to bring in an outside consultant or trainer to your organization to focus on leadership, communication, and teamwork. So thank you for asking, Brenda.
You're welcome. One of the things, I guess, a parting gift that I would like to leave to veterans is that if you served this country, and there's people in this country that may not, it doesn't matter what your skin color is, that don't like you for the color of your skin, that don't like you for your gender, don't like the fact that you're pro-military, don't like you for just you, but you serve them anyway. You serve them faithfully, you serve them honorably, you serve. Now it's time to serve yourself. So do it in the same manner. Yeah. Serve yourself honorably, serve yourself faithfully, but serve.
Yes, I love that. Great parting words. And for me, if you're trying to figure out if you need to bring someone into your organization, just think about where you are today, that point A, and where you want your organization to be, that point B. And if you feel like there is a gap between where you are and where you want to be, then that's a good reason for us to have a conversation about that. So not only do I focus on the communication and how teams operate a little bit better, it is about disrupting those systems which could be mindset, could be the way that you work, that will impede your organization from being successful. Yes.
And also one of the things that we provide outside of, the VA compensation and Social Security and OPM is we're a great provider of resources. So we also link homeless veterans with agencies and services that can help them.
I'll do it all.
Yes. We are linked with, we merged our company with Interlink Counseling. So even though, I work in the field still, on a mass, a larger mass scale, we link with, D. Anthony Harris and Interlink Counseling. And so we're able to, and it doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can reach you anywhere they are.
Right. One call, that's all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Andrea
Thank you.
Jones, for coming in and, sitting in, doing the interview and letting our veterans and, our followers, let them know exactly what you do and how you can help as well.
And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.